Hey, all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. Also with us today, the third member of the Clock Tower team, Brayden, with us as well. We're going to talk about all the stuff from the past couple of weeks. We have New Jersey, we have Vancouver, we've got updates to the release schedule, and we're going to be talking more about some of the stuff we've been seeing with the new Avatar and Hololive sets that they've been making the rounds kind of in the Weiss sphere. Definitely worth talking about. So we'll get to all of that.
So Milano happened during the same time as New Jersey. Going over top eight really quickly. In first place, there was Bang Dream, the 8 salvage Kasumi, the Hololive Kanata Marine, and Dal, the coterie into the origami top end. Second place, we have the Escanor build, the standard Escanor build with Alice with the Silica top end and 8 salvage AOT. Third place, we have Kaguya. This is the salvage choice build. We also have the Meliodas SDS build with the Elizabeth Stocksoul combo. Definitely trying to play more defensively, trying to play into a lot of those different things that can shut off the burns as well at the top, paired with another SAO build. Fourth place, we have, again, another Hololive. This is the Corne Marine build. We have the Ruby, the choice with the double standby combos, the Pura into the Ruby top end, as well as Quince alongside that, the 8 standby build. The bottom half of the list, we have another SAO deck. This is the Kirito top end with Alice, SDS, the double stock soul builds with the Escanor, and another Bang Dream deck. This is Kanan into Kasumi, still playing that top end Kasumi. Another 8 salvage Kasumi build for Bang Dream. Kaguya, running a double salvage pants combos, kind of playing around with some of those. Sword Art, another salvage top end. Bang Dream, full new build. This is running the choice into the pants top end. Paired with Dal, this is the Miku the pants build into the coterie choice top end. Then we also have the TRV Dual Rangers into Pachin. Rounding out top 8, we have Tokyo Revengers 8 Standby, another Escanor build, along with an Alice build. So a lot of Escanor in this regional, making into top 8, more than typically expected to see. Still a lot of Alice, we expected. Not as much Alice, though, as it has been in most other regions. Outside of that, a couple different unique builds for Dal. Dal's definitely been experimenting, trying to figure out something to be able to play into this meta, and at least with some of these teams has some interesting answers to try to play into it, trying to play it into a lot more of that tech options as well. But with that in mind, we're going to turn over to Newark. Most of the team was there. I was not there. I was unable to make it. But Colton, do you want to kick off New Jersey for us?
Brayden and I were at this event, and we'll talk about how that went for us in a little bit. First of all, top 8. 8 Standby Quince, Standby Salvage Kaguya, and an Alice Kirito finishing first. AOT Salvage Choice. First time AOT's gotten a top in a while. Alice Silica and 8 Standby Quince in second. Alice Kirito, 8 Standby Quince, and Sora Marine in third. Kanata Marine, 8 Salvage Kaguya, and Alice Silica. Rounding up top 8, we had Salvage Choice Kaguya, a Silica Sword Art, and a Pants Salvage Slime with the 2-1 Mocha combo. Kanata Marine, 8 Standby Quince, Salvage Choice AOT. Then we had an Escanor Bofree and a Silica, a Bang Dream, AOT Salvage Choice, and another Kaguya. A ton of Kaguya here. Like, Kaguya has not had a great season, but here we are at the final event in the States. 4 of the 8 teams have some kind of Kaguya, and they're different too. You've got a couple of standby lists. You've got the 8 salvage list, a couple of different top ends as well. You got the salvage top end. You also have the choice Chica top end. So honestly, kind of an impressive showing for Kaguya. I think that's the first thing that I noticed when I look at this.
The other big thing I noticed with this is we see 6 out of the 8 teams have SAO, which was to be expected.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really going to be surprised by any of that. Still some Hololive hanging around. Sora Marine, couple of different. There's a Corne Marine and the Kanata Marine, so Marine top end still relevant. Couple of AOTs as well, both salvage choice. So AOT having its best showing in a while. Brandon, what is this slime list? I've never seen this combo. Can you talk to me and explain to me what this is?
Oh, so this is the Mocha combo at 2. Essentially, what this is trying to do is with the Mocha being able to kind of just look through only the top 2 cards of the deck. It's only a 1 soul body, so with the climax in play, it's swinging for 2 souls. So it's trying to essentially kind of work through damage in that mid game, just to try to help speed the game along through its opponent's deck. So when it gets to the end game, it can continue to play its slime game, trying to compress, trying to heal down, trying to play what we typically associate with slime, but trying to stick the damage in with that combo.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. I can see this as like your 2-turn end game. It just comes down at 2. If you can try field this, you're probably just gonna stick 6 off the top. If you don't trigger, you're definitely gonna stick 6 off the top almost. So it makes sense. I can see why this works. This is the first time that this list has topped this season. But yeah, a lot of the usual suspects in top 8. We were in New Jersey this weekend. We hung out with a lot of the Pittsburgh crew. Pittsburgh crew took third. New Jersey crew finished first. So congrats to them on good finishes. Our team was second in the standings. We picked up kind of a friend of a friend from Pennsylvania to join us. He was on Alice in our third lane. We went 6-1 in Swiss, second in the standings, and got DQ'd at deck check because the third member of our team had a card in his deck that was not in his deck log. That sucked, and it was an accident, nothing beyond that. Just really, really unfortunate. And a reminder that always double and triple check your teammate's deck in a trios format, because we should have been top 8 and we were not because of that mistake. Brayden and I both passed our deck checks and played pretty well, so we're going to go over those rounds real quick. Brayden, you were on something that I think is a little bit different from what a lot of people would have expected to see. You were on Choice Salvage Bang Dream. Take us through what the list does, and then go ahead and talk about your rounds.
All right. So, Choice Salvage Bang Dream, definitely a weirder pick considering the current state of the format, and by that I mean Alice. If your deck doesn't have a good answer for that, you better just and you just can't ignore it. So, I was going in with a few Bang Dream list ideas, 8 Salvage in particular. I decided to go on Choice because of one card in particular, but we'll get to that one once we hit level 1. So we'll go through zeros. At 0, we have 4 of the Yuki Nariki, the best clock plus that Bang Dream has. Grabs any music character, can potentially plus on the backswing if you cancel in its lane. I am running 6 Brainstorm. I am running 4 copies of the Hello Happy World New Anniversary Brainstorm. The reason I'm running 4 of this Brainstorm in particular is because I want this card in my deck as frequently as possible. Because if I have the Choice Climax down, this gains its own Choice icon, which is a whole advantage engine of this deck, because this deck does not play a traditional plussing level 1 combo. Alongside of that, I am playing 2 copies of the Morphonica Brainstorm. Luckily, this happens to be a search Brainstorm as opposed to the Hello Happy World salvage one, so I get both zones if I want it. But the Morphonica Brainstorm has a fun little extra effect where I can rest it down and send it to stock, which can help me recoup some stock cost if I need to really commit and play my Adachis at 1, potentially even pay 3 Encore at some point, just to maintain some field presence. Also at 0, we're playing 1 of the Hagami, the Jinsei, the Climax Search. This is incredibly useful in a deck that wants to recur its yellow Climax combo. Because we are running so many yellow cards in the deck, we can actually run a whole playset of the Azusa. This is true Azusa for yellow music characters. Usually that is only restricted to Hello Happy World decks, but because we have enough yellow at 1 and 0, we can use this as some deck speed and just a good going first option. And then rounding out the zeros, we have this Global 500 with that can marker our 2-1. And then it can also change into the 2-1 to give our board a significant amount of power. Going into level 1, we have 2 of the red Adachi. This is really nice because this is extra red fix for the deck. It also shuts down another lane if I'm fighting standby and they put something in the back row, I can lock it down. And that is just a classic hard removal, the new red Adachis that send to memory. Really good into things like Alice, things like Standby Nino, things like early plays. It just puts in a lot of really good generic work for the deck. We are running 2 copies of this 1-0 Hagami. This is almost a Shimakai. It swings in at 7k by itself, just a really good power line. It's actually the same power line as our Climax combo. But it also has on attack, shuffle back 2 to grant a character 2k for the turn. This works really well because we can do the classic your normal character gaining a trigger icon. You can do the classic play where you shuffle back 2 characters into your very small deck and then just have 2 free Climax-like trigger icons in your deck. Especially because, going into our level 1 combo, we have the Count-On level 1 choice combo. It swings in quite sizable, a nice 8k with the Climax. It gains Twin Drive with the Climax, so we can rip more choice triggers and pay out Climaxes and keep our stock clean. And then if it wins its lane, or doesn't effectively die on its own swing, it cannot become reversed on the opponent's turn. This is not a traditional plussing level 1 combo. This struggles very much into Alice because it cannot scale Alice without some help. But if it does live on the board against any 1k1 deck, it just continuously pluses you every turn, and you never have to commit more cards to board, which is the whole idea of this deck, is you commit your combo, you sit there and loop Climax, and then you hope to just slowly assemble your pieces over 1 to 2 turns, and then you drop your nice, cheap, very accessible finisher. To assist in the Alice matchup, we have 1 more secret tech card at level 1. We have the Bear. The Bear has 1 really great effect, besides being a global level assist, which is really nice just at the later levels, on turn only. It has repeatable, pay 1, ditch 1, to bounce an opponent's character. This can target both front and back row, and you can perform that multiple times per turn as long as you can continuously pay that cost. What you can do with this is you can spam out 2 of it. You can bounce 2 lanes of Alice and force them to hard play them again, and then because Alice requires units on board for power, your Shimakai, if you pump itself, actually does force a backup in that 3rd lane. Other plays against standby, if they standby 2/2s the back row and you don't stun it with the Adachi, you can just bounce it back to their hand and they have a useless 2/2 in their hand. If they have annoying neg souls, you can bounce those to hand. Anything cross turn. Just in general, a spammable bounce is a very strong generalized mechanic. Its 3rd line attacks actually has a really great interaction with our Morphonica Brainstorm, where we can actually brainstorm with the Morphonica Brainstorm, rest the Bear to stand the Brainstorm, and then rest the Brainstorm again to send it to stock, effectively getting us a free 4-card mill potential hits on the Brainstorm. Moving into level 2, we have a 3k Memory Kick Punch, just because you need to be able to threaten that in the current environment. Certain things needing full board requirement, like Escanor in particular, as well as being able to threaten out things like Baji from Tokyo Revengers. This just shuts down so many plays that it's required to have it as just a 1-of, even though the bodies that I'm defending with it aren't the biggest. Also at level 2, we have the second piece of the Global 500, the Marker Package. This gives 1,000 globally times the level of the player, which at level 1, global 1K is pretty good. But at level 2, global 2K is suddenly a significant amount of power, especially if you're playing the early plays, or your level 1 combo just swinging in at 10K naturally is really hard for a lot of decks to deal with, aside from Alice. Going into level 3, we run 2 of the Hello Happy World early play, just a 2 or less early play healer. If we have a full board of Hello Happy World, which most of the deck is Hello Happy World, the Morphonica Brainstorm is the main thing that would interfere with this. But if you do have full board Hello Happy, this becomes a 10-5 base, and it can bounce back to hand if you want to replay it again. And then rounding out the top end, we have the 3/2 Star Cosmi. Any Bang Dream deck should probably be playing this as its finisher. It's the most affordable. It's very cheap to play, as like similar to Marine. It digs for its own climax and only plays for 1 stock. And then it has a really great anti-burn effect on it cross turn when you perform the combo, which a lot of decks are not prepared to deal with. On top of that, it comes with this great 3/0 event that just gives neg3 soul to this Cosmi, or neg3 soul to the character across from the Cosmi. So not only does your opponent not get to burn you with auto damage, if they swing in for, like, say, 3 for lethal, you can just say no. The only other card in this deck is 2 of Buns for Luck, which is the best card in this deck. Level 2 Stock Swap just wins games. And then rounding out the triggers, we got 4 Choice and 4 Salvage.
So you had a plan for Alice specifically. Did you run into any Alices in your rounds?
I did run into 1 round of Alice. It happened to be our friends from Pittsburgh who came in 3rd place at the very end of it. The bear did come in handy, though, more in other matchups like Standby. Specifically, I fought Adventure Time Standby as well as a Nino Standby, and it performed very well in both of those matchups.
So you want to just go through your rounds, starting at round 1, real quick, and just work your way through?
Yeah, sure. So, round 1, I fought against 8 Standby Adventure Time. The bear came out, and it did bounce, like, double back row. He had, like, the 3/2 bubblegum assist in the back, and, like, a 2/2. I bounced both of them. They ran out of steam super quick. It was a newer player as well. He paid a lot of stock for pay 3 encores. Luckily, when I had like empty board, because he's playing Standby, Adventure Time I think has the huge problem of Standby doesn't push damage. So I ended up taking it just because I'm a 1K1 deck that can push damage. Going into round 2, I lost this round. I lost to 8 Standby Nino. At the very top end, it was a very close game. We both canceled a lot at 2, but going into the finisher turn, I was only able to get double Kasumi combo on the board. And he was able, after I survived his Nino burn turn, he was able to find the Icy Tail Miku and have it in the 3rd lane without my anti-burn. And I was like, my deck state was like 2 and 5, 2 and 4 going to that. So it's like he instantly had it with just the Icy Tail. So he got that one. Close game, though. Good opponent. Good game. Going into round 3, I was fighting just the standard the Danmachi list with like the 12 events. Just very standard Danmachi, salvage pants. He triple canceled at 2 for 3 turns straight, and unfortunately my deck is just not capable of keeping up with that kind of canceling. So he never even dropped a finisher. I just ate the damage and died to vanilla swings. That was a rough one, but still, congrats to him for doing well. Round 4, so I'm now 1 and 2 on the day. Going into round 4, I fought against Kanata Marin. He ate a significant amount of damage early. I think I was at 0 when I pushed him into 2. He drops 1 lane of Kanata, because that's all he could afford to do. And after that turn, I was at 2. I ate a lot of damage at 1, basically skipped 1. However, my opponent had 9 stock with 2 climaxes in it. He had 2 climaxes left in his waiting room, and he had 9 cards in deck. And I top decked Bunch for Luck. I top decked Stock Swap. So I hit him with the Stock Swap. He goes back with 4. And the refresh ping off the top is another climax. So he is 3 in a very large deck. I send the Kanata to memory, and I just swing with 1k1 across the board, and he eats all of it. He tries to triple Marine me, but it's not enough. I'm at like 2-1 or something, so triple Marine does not kill from that range, and I'm able to just close it out. So unfortunate situation for him, but that's why we run stock swap in our decks. The next round was against 8 Standby Nino again. I played basically the exact same game as the last one, except this time I won the game because I was able to drop my triple of my combo. Just a good Weiss game. I didn't write anything down for this one. Next round was against Escanor. Again, I dropped Buns for Luck, stock swapped him, and I hit like 3 climaxes, or 4 climaxes, I think, including one of his choices. And I think the big thing that I hit with that one was I hit like 3 of the level 0 that Escanor needs to ditch for combo. So he had no way to actually do the Escanor combo to try and kill me from like 2-2 or something. So I won that one. Next round, I fought against our Pittsburgh guys. This is round 7, fighting Alice in the ace slot. He was, let's see here, played normal game. I dropped the bear on him. I bounced like 1 Alice. Adachi'd another one, and like he backed up the 3rd lane. So the standard play that I was looking for. He only got 1 like full turn of Alice, or like 2 turns of Alice, but he had a bad refresh, and he was out 7 with like 12 cards left, and I killed him from like 2-5. So he had a really rough game. He also said that when he did his rundown on the Pittsburgh channel. You can go listen to that because they described that game as well, but good job to them. Then we went to deck check, and we had our unfortunate situation. I ended the day 5-2. My team was 6-1, so we had a pretty good day overall.
How'd you do, Colton?
Well, I was in Seat B for this one. I ended the day 4-3, so positive on the day. Would have liked to have gone X2. That's like always kind of the goal, especially in a 7-round event. You want to go 5-2. Give up a little bit short of what I wanted to do, but we were good enough to be 6-1 as a team. Our 3rd lane also went 4-3. Round 1, we played into Alexander's team actually, so I paired into Zizaz on 8 choice slime. Dude just wouldn't take damage. I feel like he canceled on 2 like 7 or 8 times in that game. Just would not take any damage, and that was kind of the end of it. He didn't even combo off or anything at the end. It didn't matter. He just stayed at level 2 like the entire game. So I started 0-1. Next round we played the eventual winners. We lost the round, but I paired into standby salvage Kaguya in Seat B. I won this one primarily because I do think it's a good matchup for Dragon Maid for a lot of the same reasons that a lot of 1k1s are, except Kaguya specifically doesn't push damage at 1. So it's not pushing in the mid game because it is running, standby. So I can get a damage lead with Dragon Maid, which I did, and eventually closed out. Round 3, I paired into 8 salvage Quince. The guy I played against played it really well, had a full hand the whole time, compressed down really well. But ultimately, what ended up happening was he had 1 card in deck. I was like 95% sure it was a CX. So I burned for 1 in the Elaloo lane, which of course canceled, which gave me back-to-back swings for 4, and he just ate 8 off the top, and that was basically it. The hope there is that you get one of those, that you stick one of the 4s in that spot. Try to get him kind of into the middle of 3, and then try to close from there. I had like the Icy Tail down. I had another lane of combo, like, but he could also just eat 8 off the top. That happens sometimes too. So we take those when we run into them. Round 4, this was the one round where the deck fell apart. Had CXs in hand, just no CX ditch to be found, even though I run 4 copies. Happens sometimes, just 8 out of 50 problems. Um, so lost that game. I was playing into the old AOT package of all things. So into the air and into the Mikasa. And I just 8 damage the whole game because I basically just drew a bunch of climaxes and didn't draw any pieces to fix. So that sucked, but that was the only game where the deck really didn't function. It functioned well in all the other games. So I was 2-2 at that point. Next round, I beat Alice, and I'm just going to keep saying it. Dragon Maid just punishes Alice for trying to do what it does. You can get over Alice with the level 1 killer really easily, and you can canon it back to just kill it the next round if they are able to recur it. The 2-1 just sends the Alice away forever. Just honestly bullied the Alice board in the mid game. He had the Mother's Rosario top end. He ended up whiffing that pretty badly. He only hit 1 CX on his Mother's Rosario, but I was still at level 2 and had plenty of compression, so I think it pushed me 2-3. But like 3-1, I think is where it ended up. With the Elaloo, he canceled well off the top with the Elaloo or into the Elaloo combo. But again, when you overwhelm the Alice board in the mid game, the Sword Art player runs out of resources. Like that's the biggest reason to deal with the Alice is not so much to clear the board or whatever. It's because every lane, every Alice they get to keep on board is a stock and a card that they don't have to spend to keep their board. So he was just out of gas. He was out of cards. He couldn't present enough damage because he was just out of cards. Yeah, I think that that's probably the most important thing to beating Alice that no one really talks about is if you can answer the Alice board in the mid game. The top ends, they're not cheap. The Mother's Rosario is not cheap. The Kirito is, relatively inexpensive for what it is, but like Argo's expensive. Silica requires hand. Like, if you can beat the Alice in the mid game, you shut off a lane of combo just because you starve them of resources. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. He went all in with the Mother Rosario combo, and then he didn't have anything for a follow-up turn. So like that was probably the game that I felt the best about. I played it really well. The deck handled the matchup the way it was supposed to. Next round, I played into the Beaufry that eventually finished top 8. This was a weird one. This was the one game where it was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have won this one. Like looking back over the rounds, you can go, I should have won that one, should have won that one. This one, he probably should have won this one. I was at 2-5, but I had like triggered twice or something the previous turn. Anyway, I was like 2 out of 20, and I needed a cancel in the top 9 cards. I'm like, please give me a cancel in the top 9. It came on 9, and then I turned around and just tried to throw as much damage at the board as I could. He ate 2 on the Icy Tail, and then like 7 off the top. Just ate a bunch of damage. Just damage off the top. Elaloo does enough instances that you can take advantage. So I was able to get there. Going in around 7, played into Pittsburgh's team. I think it was Tyler on 8 standby Quince. It was a good game. Close game. I got pushed into 3 first. I got pushed deep into 3. So, the onus becomes, the onus is on me then to try to turn around and close. I was 1 out of 2. I had 1 Elaloo left. He was 3-3. And basically it was like, all right, I'm either going to have to swing over for 5 and, with cancel burn 5, which feels terrible, or I can side him here for 3 because I had the extra soul in the back row. But I need to hit the burn one off the top. It's got to be a character so I can get the burn one. If that's there, then I'm presenting lethal twice. Top card was a CX. The 3 sticks immediately, so he only goes to 3-6, and he's able to turn around and close because I was at like 3-5 myself. So tough loss, but good player, good deck. Those are the ones where it's just like, it comes down to, if it's there or if it's not. If that top card had not been a CX, I'd probably win that game. But it is what it is. I ended up 4-3, which again, not as good as I'd wanted to do. The goal is always 5-2. But I think given how the rounds went, given that there were a couple that I'm gonna look back and think I should have had that, and at least one where it's like, yeah, I should have lost that one. I think 4-3 is about where I should have ended up. I also drew into a lot of good players. We played into 3 teams that went top 8, and then Alexander's team, and I had to play it as Izaz. So like most of my matchups, and that doesn't even include the Alice, which is, kind of still the boogeyman of the meta. So like I had to play into a lot of good players. So 4-3 is not bad. Didn't do as well as I did last week, but overall, season wrapped up. Dragon Maid goes 63% win rate in Swiss, which I think is pretty solid. That is above the average win rate for every archetype in Rumble. So, like, I'm not going to complain about, being above replacement for an Alice with the Dragon Maid list. So that's it for New Jersey. Let's go and talk quickly about Vancouver, which just took place today as we are recording this. Brayden trawled the Discord and was able to get top 8.
Thanks, Kevin, for posting that. In first place, we had Don Machi, Saikano, and Sword Art. Don Machi and Saikano being our standard lists, with the Sword Art being the Alice Silica build. Second place, we had another Sword Art, and again, the Alice Silica build. Kaguya, this is the Salvage Pants list, as well as Tokyo Revengers, this is kind of the dual laners Pa-Chin build. Third place, we had, again, another SAO deck. We had the SDS deck, this featuring the Escanor top end, as well as the 8 Standby Quince deck. In fourth place, we had the Bang Dream deck. This is the Salvage Into the Pants top end. We had Don Machi, our standard list, and a Hololive Kanata Marine. The bottom half of top 8, we had a Sword Art deck. This is the Alice Kirito build. We had the Tokyo Revengers 8 Pants Pa-Chin build, and another Hololive featuring the OKU Sora build. 6th through 8th, we additionally had Quince, Saikano, and SAO. Unknown what specifics of those CX splits are. Pretty likely they're standard matchups. Looking at probably the 8 Standby Quins, likely the traditional Saikano build, and likely the Alice Silica build. We also had a Kanata Marine 8 Choice Dal with, again, Choice Salvage SAO. And again, we had another Kanata Marine, a Choice Salvage SAO, and an 8 Standby Quins.
Yeah, so I think the obvious standout here is a pair of Saikanos in top 8. We do know that the Saikano on the winning team went 4-5 on the day, which frankly, as much as like that sounds like it's a neg, winning 4 games at a regionals level event with Saikano is a task. So props to whoever brought that, because that deck is not very good. So
the deck's good into everything that is not named Alice.
Alice is a pretty bad matchup.
Yeah.
A lot more Alice, no surprise. We know that there are some Silicas there. Don Machi on the winning team. So Don Machi still relevant. Again, we talked about this in the last video. Don Machi, one of those decks that's relevant in the right hands. Again, only one SDS. Like, it really does feel like the Escanor list is just kind of falling off a cliff at this point. Anything here that stands out to either of you guys?
Yeah, and so this is a big difference thing. In New Jersey, all the Alice lists, we saw a lot more Kirito top end. And then here, going into Vancouver, we're starting to see a lot more of the Silica top end.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Kirito is a much bigger commitment of a package that you have to put in for it, or a much a higher floor, I guess, as opposed to like those big explosive ceilings you see from Argo.
Mm-hmm.
I know Japan very much settled in on the Silica list like a few weeks after the set release, just because of the check X just providing that level of consistency at the top,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't need to keep all your finisher pieces in hand the whole game. You can commit resources to maintaining your Alice board and recurring that. as opposed to holding 2 Argo and Climax.
Hmm. Yeah, Silica does seem to be the most popular one overall. Kirito actually had the highest win rate in Rumble. And we talked about how like a lot of people seem to think that the Kirito is a good answer to the Alice Mirror. In part because of the pants trigger, and in part, like you said, it's got a really consistent floor. You don't have to dominate the board to collect the resources necessarily. Because the Kirito is it's a little bit lighter in terms of its resource commitment, although like the debt commitment, as you mentioned, is much higher. You have to run more different things to make it work. So yeah, still, it doesn't seem to be broad agreement on how to play the Alice. The Argo is definitely kind of the third option, it looks like right now, despite being the most explosive top end. But Silica and Kirito both getting run in English right now. So that's that for Vancouver. That's it for Springfest up to this point. We're starting to wrap up Springfest now. The final weekends. This coming weekend, there's a tournament in the Netherlands, and the following weekend, there will be a tournament in the UK. At that tournament, the Quince movie set will be legal for play. So let's actually have a look at the release schedule. So Quince movie set is now out. It will not be legal for play for a couple weeks yet. London will be the first event where it's legal. Following that, Avatar: The Last Airbender, June 16th. We still have Review Starlight, Slime 3 in July, Hololive 2 in August, Overlord September 1st, Review Starlight movie September 29th. We have a release date now for Azure Lane. Brandon, what date is that?
The release date for Azure Lane being October 27th, 2023, where we have the booster pack and then 4 trial decks coming out with that as well.
Yeah, so it looks like the release schedule definitely, now we can say this. Once we get into August, the release schedule definitely slows down. We're looking at 4 confirmed releases between the beginning of August and the end of October. Definitely could be more. They get slid in there. We've gotten more reveals for Licorice Recoil. We know that's coming. So Spy Family, Chainsaw Man, still waiting on those confirmations. We know Guilty Gear Strive will be this winter. But yeah, a much lighter release schedule from August to October than what we're currently in here in the middle of this year, where we're like getting one every 2 weeks.
Which also, in a way, makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of the sets that are coming out right now are sequel sets that don't have trial decks. So trying to kind of cram some of those together to get to that next set that has a trial deck can make a lot of sense as well.
I'm okay with this. I like the lighter release schedule because it gives the meta a chance to breathe, kind of. You're not immediately getting something new that changes things every 2 weeks. And to be fair, a lot of these releases, like Saikano, Grisaya, Review Starlight, they're not going to change the meta all that much. And they're also coming out during the summer, right? It's not like this all dropped during the spring and that Springfest was wildly different from the beginning to the end. Springfest, aside from the Alice release, which is pretty early on in the Springfest season, remained pretty consistent beginning to end in terms of like what was available and what was viable. Obviously, Alice being the key outlier there. So that is what we have for our release schedule. Let's get into what is coming next in some of these sets. Avatar is dropping June 16th. There have been a lot of spoilers, and I think the whole set is now officially spoiled. There's one card in there, Brandon, and I'm going to let you handle this because you're the one who's been doing most of the testing around here for Avatar. There's one card in there that may cause some problems, and there's been a lot of conversation around it, and it's spawned almost like this new genre of deck in this game that will potentially play a role in the English meta. So do you want to just go ahead and explain how all that works?
Sure. So one of the releases pretty early on for Avatar was this Sokka. Notably, it's kind of go over the effect. When the card is placed on stage from hand, or when put into the waiting room, you can pay the cost of pay 1, clock yourself from waiting room to search out your deck for a cost 0 character. that is either equal to or lower than your level. And then you can spawn out on stage in any position. So the real big thing about this is noting that when this card is removed from stage during your attack phase, that it would immediately spawn out another character standing to your stage. So potentially being able to use this to spam out multiple attackers consistently is something that was very intriguing and something that's definitely looking at for testing purposes with this set. And so potentially, for example, even pairing the things like standby, being able to stand by over this card with maybe another instance of this card. So you constantly have access to another potential attacker during your turn. Definitely provoked a lot of discussion as to what would make something like this viable. This kind of continuous attack during main phase, because the card doesn't specify bringing cards rested, for example. With that kind of in mind, that has kind of brought about this kind of discussion initially.
So, just to make it like abundantly clear, the concern with Sokka is that with the Sokka and the standby triggers, because there is a 12 standby list in Avatar, you can bring out the Tutu specifically that can then sack the Sokka, pay one, clock self to summon another attacker from the deck. In theory, if you hit your standby triggers at the right times, because you do have the twin driver as well, you could potentially stack a whole bunch of attacks right in a row.
Yeah, as early as level 1, because you could stand by the 2/2 in. Yeah.
So how many attacks can you get off of this? Where does this top out?
Just generic testing and kind of timing of climaxes. You could potentially even hit as high as like 9 attacks, but that would involve clocking yourself at least 6 times.
It also involves like triggering 4 standbys during your battle steps.
Yeah, this one would be triggering standby at the 5th trigger and then the 7th trigger, specifically, to be able to get up to 9.
And then still having targets and all. There's a lot of conditions on the Sokka one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Obviously it's still, early days, still a lot of theory crafting, a lot of testing going on. There could be some other interaction that, that we're not seeing here. But as of right now, based on what we know, now that we have all of the cards, it does not look like Sokka is going to get the extra pieces it needs to become particularly obnoxious. Like, yes, it can technically have 9 attacks, but it's clocking itself for each of those attacks, and it's also doing this usually with a standby trigger on board. So you're not pushing a bunch of extra soul. Like, you're clocking yourself 6 times to try to swing 9 times, which isn't amazing rate, especially because you also, like, you're going stock neutral because you have to pay one every time you bring the Sokka out, right? So you're not getting a whole bunch of extra stock. You're not even really getting a whole lot of interesting things off the standby triggers because you're using them intentionally to kind of, get the Sokka on the board and then, get the Sokka off the board. It does not look from here, from where I'm sitting right now, which is, just all hearsay. I'm listening to what other people have to say on this. I have not tested the deck myself. It looks like this deck is not going to be a problem. It's going to kind of fall in the same category as a lot of these other cards slash decks where you kind of do a lot of damage to yourself, and the payout is that you hopefully push as much or more at the other person. We saw that with Freeze and like the Explosion Magic event in Konosuba. The Ifrit deck in Slime does something like this, where it just like levels itself essentially to try to burn 4 3 times. It's meant to be a risk reward kind of thing, or at least like the way that the archetype works is it's a risk reward kind of thing. And right now, based on what we see, it doesn't look like the Sokka specifically is going to be worth it. However, the Sokka got some people thinking, and Oomphy runs the channel Honest Weiss Schwarz. We'll put a link to the video in the description. Came up with some degenerate nonsense with the new Hololive. This could matter. In the old Hololive stuff, there are 2 cards already. There is a Sora level 0 and a Marine level 0. The Sora, when it dies, search for a cost 0 at your level, put it on the stage rested.
Profile we have seen. I have this profile in Fujimi. I have this profile in Bang Dream, but that is not the problem.
Not an issue. It pairs with the level 0 Marine that allows you to, at the end of its attack, sack a character from stage to waiting room. If you sack the Sora from the stage, you get to summon out a cost 0 from your deck, rested. Which again, shouldn't be an issue. The problem is now we have this level 1 Ayame that's coming out in the new set. This Ayame, when it enters the field, searches the deck for a copy of itself and summons it to the board, and it doesn't say it comes out rested. So you use the Marine to sack the Sora to search out your first Ayame, which enters the board rested. But when it enters the board, it then looks for another one, which then looks for another one, which then looks for another one. And the cost for that is you ditch one for each of those that you summon. So you are ditching 3 cards from your hand. So in practice, how this works is you get 6 attacks. Not only do you get 6 attacks, you can start on your at the beginning of the turn by crashing a couple of Aqua Rickies. You've got a couple different Aqua Rickies to choose from. You can pay 1, clock yourself. Top check 2, add any characters. So you can do that to fill your hand full of extra characters, which you can then ditch off of the Ayame effects, which then also refunds the stock from those Rickies. So you just got 6 attacks, and the only thing it cost you was like a couple cards in your clock if you use the Aqua Rickies specifically to try to get you those extra resources. This, unlike the Sokka, presents a real problem. And this deck is already starting to pick up in JP. JP saw the list, and now they're starting to play it, and it's starting to win. Because getting 3 extra attacks in the mid game, especially if you have a CX down, is significant for a lot of reasons. Like, you're getting extra stock, you are pushing extra damage. This is actually a deck. Like, we talked about, how there are these, weird decks that don't really technically work. They're over here and, they have like a 30% win rate or whatever because sometimes they'll pop off and work, but their win rate is so low that it's not worth playing them. Then you have like the second class of these very strange decks, and that's where you get like Tokyo Revengers. Tokyo Revengers is probably the best example of a deck that kind of breaks the rules a little bit. Cards that were not necessarily meant to be played together, but when you put them together, it just kind of works. Tokyo Revengers is easily the most successful version, most successful iteration of this kind of like off-the-wall deck building stuff, which is fine. It's had some success, but it hasn't been particularly broken. It's an annoying matchup to play into, but that's about it. The problem that we're running into now is this Ayame list could go beyond that and become actually a real problem, where it is, if not meta-defining, at least claims a reasonable share of the meta, and just gets to do things that you're not supposed to be able to do in Weiss. This is what happens when you don't know how to do R&D. This should never have happened. The deck is currently legal in JP. It's getting results in JP, and now there are calls, reasonable calls, for Bushiroad to do something, either to errata this card or to hit it with some kind of restriction so it can't pop off and do all of this. I am very much against a ban list. We've talked about this many times. If you are going to have a ban list, this is what it's for. Hitting things that got through R&D that shouldn't have existed in the first place because you messed up on your end as the company. We saw this with Batman Ninja. They made a mistake. They fixed it with a restriction. It's not that they printed a thing thinking that it was going to be fair, and then it wasn't. No, they messed up. They did not account for certain interactions. This is a lot like that. They did not account for this interaction in their testing at all.
So I think the big thing with this is it does require a very specific set of cards to make this run, right? And it is also in the set that has a lot of hype coming in with some of the builds that it already has in play. And then I think then the question becomes, is this something stackable or loopable with some of those big explosive things coming? And I think that that's one of the big questions.
The deck has existed for like 2 weeks as of this recording. And it's already getting results in JP.
Hololive, the set's been around for like a month or two. And just for everyone, like, if you're still like asking questions about it, like whether or not this is it really that bad to swing 6 times at 1-0, starting at 0-6? The reason why this is super bad is restand in general as a cost is like a 3 stock overhead or something. So that already just breaks the game balance in general. But the other thing is that when your opponent, you can do this as early as going is your second turn of the game. So when this dropped, for the 2 weeks that it's legal before they quick ban it, there are some counterplay. There is some counterplay for this. First, you can memory kick either the Marine or the Sora if your deck has access to level 1 memory kick counter. You can kick either of those, and it does stop the combo.
But you can also just side with the Marine.
Yes, if you're siding with it, then they're again, that's why people are teching in the 2 soul climaxes. They're looking for 2 soul, the Shioko 2 soul climaxes. Because Hololive does not have its own natural 2 soul, so that is a thing people will be digging for. Brayden's quick market watch. People are going to start throwing the empty Shioko 2 souls in just so they can start side attacking your 0s and 1s or front attack for 3 just to push in a ridiculous amount of damage. So the reason why this is also just still incredibly broken is when you're on first deck and you swing 6 times, the expected damage output is like a whole level and a half worth of damage.
Yeah.
And that's with the expected canceling, with good canceling. You will just go straight to 3. And then they will do it again the next turn because they have access to things like Shuffleback and Free Fresh to just do it again.
Yep.
So I do expect at least either an errata on the Ayame to say only when placed from hand or by its own effect, because usually when we see cards that summon copies of themselves, they state by their own effect, typically. Yes, when placed by the effect of this card. So we'll probably expect to see an errata to match the text. If not, a choice restriction between the Ayame and the Sora Summoner will most likely be the next choice. You do not need the Marine, technically. You can do the same thing that the Sokka does and actually play this in standby to proc the effect as well. That also works in this list.
With that in mind, assuming that nothing is done with those cards as it makes its way into English, are these cards that can be paired in with some of the more potentially troubling cards that we see with Hololive with the new release?
I mean, the fact that you have 6 chances to trigger your bar for your Sora is pretty obnoxious.
So one of the big things that this combo does, the combo bleeds hand unless you do commit to multiple Aqua Rikis and the bounce back and check 4, Polka. But the combo, regardless, will still bleed a lot of hand, but it will generate 5 stock for the whole play. So as Colton mentioned, one of the big things that can use a lot of stock that doesn't use a lot of hand is Sora, which you can just play the 2/1 once you hit level 2, and then change and summon out all your Sora copies, because you're already playing Shuffleback in this list, so you can Shuffleback Sora Finisher or Sora Neg Souls. You have 6 swings to get bar, as Colton said, so you have bar consistency. And then you just shoved your opponent like to mid 2 or 3, and then you just hit him with Neg Soul at level 2 again. It sounds really gross. There's some testing that needs to be done with that to see how viable it is. Because you do need to like still have the Sora in hand and the 2/1 in hand with not a lot of selection for other pieces. Hololive notoriously can grab any 0 it wants at any time, but not anything else, especially in a list like this. Other things you can throw, basically the way the deck functions, you can throw one of any finisher in the front row and then still perform the full combo for 6 attacks. So if you want to do 1 lane of Marine and do the whole combo again, it's quite nice, quite easy. Gives you access to red, which the Ayame is red, so if those are not dead cards and they fix color requirement if they clock them. If you want to play 1 copy of Gura, blue is the other color people are looking at, because the Ayame needs blue experience in order to be a 6/5, just a 6/5 base unit. So you can run 1 lane of Gura. I know some people are looking at just Pants level 1 combos, are all really good, just to have the slots. And then, yeah, you can literally just jam anything into it. Because the combo bleeds hand, you can throw in the 3/2 Aki with Bodyguard if you really wanted to, and just chip your whole hand until you have 1, and then you have an 18k Bodyguard. There's a lot of things that you could just do with it that make this a troublesome deck.
And I think the worst part is that this was an accident, right? Bushiroad did not intend for this to be an archetype. This was not something that Bushiroad was planning on. But now that they're in this situation, I don't trust them to take care of it. They have had extremely bad quality control on erratas, and they have not errata'd things for months that needed erratas before. If this deck comes to English unerrata'd, unrestricted, and it remains like unequivocally the best deck in the meta, you're not going to see me on the fall circuit. This deck will make the game unbelievably toxic, to the point where it's like, why even bother? The onus is on them. They got to fix it. They messed up. They got to fix it. This isn't they printed a card that's too powerful. No, they printed stuff that they had no idea that this interaction was possible. This is the only thing that I think you can really justify having a restriction list for. And if they don't use the restriction list for this, it's all a farce. Like, they're just playing us for fools at that point. And I'm not going to play that game with them. This is as close to an existential crisis as English Weiss has seen probably ever.
Yeah, this was a major oversight of card design. I don't quite blame them for not catching this one, because it is like, it's a weird interaction, because technically the first one does come out as intended, and these are both profiles that we've seen like before in other sets. It just happens to be that like Hololive happens to be the one where it's like, oh yeah, they're both together in the same set, and they're missing this one normal line of text that would normally be there. So I am expecting a hit. I highly doubt they would let this go. The Bush, like when you hang out with the custom set creators and everything, they talk about the Bushi math. This completely violates every semblance of the Bushi math that we've seen. So I'm expecting a hit on this. If not, I would expect like any locals or anything to have their own ban list, I'm sure. This might see some play in the standard format. Who knows? Probably still not strong enough for that format. But the fact that we have to compare it to standard format Weiss is pretty telltale of how bad they messed up here.
Well, the hope I think is that I think it's the 13th they're going to be doing a JP stream. So
Yes.
hopefully that's the day when they announce like the emergency ban, which then English can just copy paste probably on release day.
Yep.
But who knows? If that stream comes and goes and there's no restriction in JP, that's a massive red flag.
We have seen this before, specifically in the Vanguard community, where they had like egregious two archetypes that were definitely not supposed to be played together, like ended up playing together, and it blew every other deck out of the water. They were pretty quick on that. It wasn't instant for that one, but it also wasn't as egregious as this one. So I am expecting a hit. If it's not in this stream, if I wouldn't be like super surprised quite yet. I would be disappointed, but I would expect like its own thing in its own emergency list definitely sooner rather than later. We'll see if the English side follows suit before release. Bushi C has done preemptive hits, not for Weiss, but for Vanguard at least. So maybe we'll see that, but it's all up in the air. Weiss doesn't have a precedent for this. The only precedent we have really is Infiltrator, Batman, and Gorilla Grodd. So we'll have to see on Tuesday with the product stream. Looking forward to that.
We will see what they do. Hopefully they do something because this is one of those times when Bushiroad really needs to step up and make make an important move for the sake of the game itself. But yeah, that's all we got. Thank you, Brayden, for jumping in. Hopefully we'll have you around for more things going forward. Love to have you do some deck stuff for Quince because that's coming out and I know you're buying into that set.
Yep, I
So
already have my playset completed. Day one.
So we will see you around more often for sure. And we're also going to be, pending things playing in the fall as well. So you'll be at a lot of the same events we'll be at. So it will
Yep.
be, we'll expect to see you here on the channel more often. That's something that I think we all would like to see.
Yep. Thanks for
Um,
having me. Shout out to the Pittsburgh guys for housing us and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. Always fun to hang out with the Pittsburgh crew. We got to hang out with them for a couple days after the Jersey event, went to their locals on Tuesday. So that was a good time. Always fun to hang out with them. A good group of folks out there. So yeah, that's it for us here on Thursday. We'll have 5 cards, 5 minutes. I think it is for Quince. Next week, Brandon will have his Quince deck, and we'll have gameplay for that the following Thursday. And then in 2 weeks, hopefully, we'll be able to talk about how JP Bushiroad made the right move and banned this before it became a problem. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.